Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Reveal Report on a Monday. I thank you all for being here. It is the Canadian Victoria Long Weekend. It's a long weekend in Canada. Just spent some time with my friends. We were doing a little bit of a barbecue, so it was a lot of fun. But the show must continue, and we're here for you. We got a lot of content still coming up this month, so stay tuned, guys. Ladies and gentlemen, last week we had Gary and Jessie, and we did a show about CERN. And it's unbelievable to me, the amount of numbers, almost 40,000 views on YouTube for this particular topic. This is astronomical, organic. The channel has grown. We're almost at 50,000. We're a couple of hundred away. Guys, please, come on. We should have hit already 50,000 6 months ago. Come on, guys, let's go. Subscribe. So many of you are in the chat who don't subscribe but want to participate and watch. Help, support, let's boost up the algorithm. Let's get more people watching the Reveal Report, and it's amazing content here that we like to share, the amazing guests. And please subscribe. We're just a couple hundred away from 50,000. It's a landmark, guys. We're almost there naturally. And again, thank you to all of you for supporting and watching. Over 40,000 we're going to hit in a couple hours. CERN's show from last week. You haven't seen it, please tune in. Incredible. Guys, big special thank you going out to this amazing woman, Miss Lisa M, for being a great supporter on PayPal this week. Thank you so much. One person, 40,000 people. Jessica, 40,000 tuned in to see the show. One person said, I love what you guys are doing. One person said, I want to support. One person said, I want to keep this on YouTube. One, a woman by the name of Lisa M. God bless her. Thank her in the comments below. Without people like her, this would be exclusive to Patreon only. So hats off to her. One person out of 40,000, Jessie. Wow. Please welcome my co-host, Miss Jessie Czebotar.
Wow, unbelievable, but so appreciative, Lisa. Thank you.
Lisa M., God bless you. We're going to say a special prayer for you. We hope you get tons of blessings, lots of love, and everything comes your way for what you're doing to help keep the show on air on YouTube and not exclusive to Patreon. So we thank you for that. All right, Jessie, big show. We're talking about secrets of the pyramids.
Yeah, good topic.
It's an interesting one. I don't think we've done a whole show on this. I think me and you have maybe touched on it in the past, and you know so much to go with it. But I mean, we have someone special who's a savant when it comes to this type of stuff. I don't know, but I mean, I said it last week, and I'm going to say it again. I don't know if he's got some type of computer chip in his brain. He went to have a special meeting with Elon Musk, how he downloads this information.
I think he's just that smart, George.
but he's talking about stuff he knows, but at the same time, if you watch him like I watch him like a hawk, he's doing research at the same time, going into one of his books, something he's got somewhere, I don't know where, and he goes into these amazing conversations, and who knows where it goes. I've had enough of doing, trying to analyze my guest. He's also an author. He is incredible. God bless him. Please welcome Mr. Gary Wayne. Gary, welcome back.
Well, thank you for inviting me back, and congratulations on the success of the last show. Nice to hear.
Yeah, of course, it was you and Jessie who bring a lot of eyes, and I am appreciative, and it goes viral. So let's do it again this week as we discuss secrets of the pyramids. Now, there are many pyramids. A lot is going on with them. But just recently now, Gary, it's starting to surface in the news. Media seems to be shining a light on the pyramids. Why is this such an important thing at this time? Let's begin with a quick video. What is the pyramids? What are they about? What's going on? Let me play this, a little context, and then we'll get into it. The mysteries that maybe surround these pyramids. Here it is.
Built as gargantuan tombs of shining white limestone, the pyramids were designed to hide dark secrets of the dead for eternity. For thousands of years, they have prompted fantastic myths and legends, as well as real and baffling scientific riddles. How were these mausoleums constructed, hundreds of feet high, true to within inches? Why was a nation devoted to housing its dead? Who were the men who hauled billions of tons of stone? Now, science is beating down the pyramids' defenses, shattering ancient myths, and revealing the truth.
Now, I have some clips to share during this show about some things that I've learned about these particular pyramids, especially in Giza. And begin. Let's begin maybe with Jesse yourself. Jesse, I mean, you've looked about the occult worship and the secrets of the Egyptians. It's prevalent with magic and what happens with the elite. A lot of people, even in today, in politics, follow what the Egyptians used to do. This is interesting stuff. Let us first begin with you. What's your take on the pyramids?
Yeah, there's some interesting things with them, more curiosity, I think, on my end. It seems like for a lot of people, there's unanswered questions like who built them? How did they get built? One of the interesting theories out there is that they were actually built with song. And, is it possible to move something with what we would call, kind of your static electricity and music with voices alone? So there's a lot of interesting theories out there, but that one probably is the most interesting to me, as well as who maybe built it. Could they have been not originally meant for the dead? Were they maybe the storehouses that Joseph built in scripture? And, if so, what caused there to be a change in their use and things like that?
I mean, a lot of good points. And we're going to have to talk. There's curses that are connected to it. How are they built? I have some information on the actual bricks used, these cubes. That's going to be interesting stuff to talk about later on in the show.
Yeah.
And who built them? Let's take this conversation where it may. Gary, why don't you take the floor for the moment and talk to us?
Yeah, so, pyramids is probably one of the most famous and mysterious things that we have on the planet. And if it was just in Egypt, you could sort of isolate that. You could probably even get your head around some of the propaganda that comes out from archaeologists, Egyptologists, seculars, historians, you name it. They're all talking a similar sort of song sheet, which is not unusual. But pyramids are not just in Egypt. There's over 1,000 pyramids that have been discovered worldwide. And they're on most all continents around the world. I mean, it's 1,000. And there are relationships between these pyramids. And they seem to have a common sort of MO in terms of the architecture that goes in with them. They are done in a way that typically we can't build them. There are a bunch in that 1,000 that would be maybe later trials where they're not as large, they're not as geometrically and astronomically aligned, and they could have been built as later on, and they're kind of an inferior technology and inferior ingredients or products or stones that were going in to build them. So, but these pyramids, they have astronomical alliances all around the world.
Mm-hmm.
So the Great Pyramid with the belts related to Orion, but they all have astrological alignments around the world. They have ratios and that will align with the Earth and the distance from the Earth to the moon and other relationships in it. It will be loaded with sacred geometry in there. And it's done to a skill level and a technology level we can't do today. And some even sort of theorize that the Central American pyramids are even more advanced than the pyramids in Egypt.
Wow.
So who built these is the question, and how did they build them? So there's a technology and a knowledge here that is unexplained in the secular history. In polytheism, we get some accounts as to how this whole thing sort of comes about. And so we get a common date that's aligned with some of these pyramids as well. And, with the alignment of the three pyramids in the middle and with Orion, they take that back to about 10,000 BC. The Sphinx has about a 10,000 BC dating as well when you factor in its water erosion, and also has an astrological alignment dating to 10,500 BC. And so we're getting an age that sort of aligns with something called the builder gods. And the builder gods built 7 great civilizations at one time in prehistory at about, say, 10,000 BC. So that number is not likely coincidental. And this is, even using the ice age of about, 14,000 BC to 15,000 BC. So life is starting to sort of come back. And all of the civilizations around the world, whether it's pyramids or these other great megaliths, tend to say, for the most part, not 100%, but for the most part, that it's the fallen angels or the gods that they worship that built this with a special technology. So we also have an account of pyramids that show up within secret societies, and within the Polychronicon and histories of Freemasonry, they actually accredit the knowledge of Enoch, son of Cain, that he develops into the 7 sacred sciences, and established the mystical sun-worshipping bull cult of the antediluvian epoch, which is the same religion that crossovers at Babel in their accounting after the flood. It's this knowledge that is used to build the pyramids, and the knowledge that comes with the technology that also accompanies the knowledge of Enoch that helps to build this. So they have an ability to do masonry that's better than what we can do today. They can move rocks into perfect places. They can cut them, carve them, do whatever they want in ways we still can't do. So it's expressing that sort of superior sort of knowledge.
Yes.
And so when we start to look at some of the traditional sort of history that we're expected to believe is that they were built in about 2300 BC, usually by 2 pharaohs. Our credit to it would be Khufu and Khafra, simply because they have some sort of reference to them that was left in the pyramids. But it doesn't say that they built it. It's just kind of a reference. And so I think what is more likely, that was a renovation of the pyramids to bring them back to life and maybe move the dirt around and get them exposed again, because that's about the dating of just after the flood biblically. And so I think that's important. But when we look at evidence from before, you have things like the victory tablet of King Menes, which is dated to 2950 to 3100 BC, just before the flood. And as you look at that secular dating for the flood, and on that victory tablet of Menes, and also Narma, he has 2 names, Narma and Menes, and it's not uncommon for these pharaohs to have up to 7 names. So it can get difficult when you're trying to look at prehistory to, get all of the dynasties right and not create 7 more, so to speak, per king. And so in that particular tablet or stela of Narma and tablet of Menes, you have this 52-degree pyramid that's shown in the background for the Great Pyramid. So that, just even using their own dating, is dating it beyond the Khafra and Khufu fairy tales. And so we don't know how old they are. We don't know exactly who built them. What we can say is that they have a technology we don't have, and it is a scientific, mathematical, logical impossibility that you can have these types of buildings built in prehistory with the same story coming from the peoples, that they were built by the gods for the most part, in ways that we can't do today, in civilizations that shouldn't be there and would never have communicated, and yet built the same type of architecture. And so what comes down with this is that it's either representing an age of the gods, as the two opinions, or it's representing an age of a lost civilization that was destroyed by the flood so that people wouldn't forget them.
You made a lot of points, and the fascinating thing to me was how you said they were built mathematically, specifically numbers to perfection. And on that, I'd like to share with you a video clip, which will get a little bit specific, what has information that's a bit shocking, and it may even talk about a cube. And just so you're quite familiar with cubes. So let me play this, and then both your takes on it, and tell me what you think. Turn up your volumes, take a listen.
Giza Plateau, Egypt. The Great Pyramid is arguably the most enigmatic structure on the face of the earth. It is the only surviving wonder of the ancient world, and has inspired endless speculation as to how it was built and what purpose it served.
Ever since the first studies of the Great Pyramid in Egypt have been made, researchers have been amazed at the mathematical knowledge that is encoded into the Great Pyramid, the measurements that are used in it. Even the placement of the Great Pyramid has aroused great interest among Egyptologists.
The Great Pyramid is aligned to within 3/60ths of a degree of north, a more accurate alignment than any other structure on Earth.
When you look at the Great Pyramid's alignment, it's aligned very, very close to true north. Even more interesting is to think about tracking back in time, because the Earth's axis has been shifting slowly. It's what we call precesses. And so if there's been a shift in that alignment, it could be that it was even more accurately aligned to north in the past when they built it.
The Great Pyramid is not only perfectly aligned to the cardinal points, its placement on the Earth is seemingly intentional as well.
If you pass a great circle from the Great Pyramid through its cardinal and its ordinal directions, what you find is that these circles will pass through more landmass of the Earth than any other location on the Earth. You find that the Great Pyramid is essentially located at the centre of the world's landmass.
Since the first accurate survey of the Great Pyramid in 1925, mathematicians and researchers have discovered even more profound connections relating to geodetic information, or information pertaining to the measurement and representation of the Earth, encoded in its design.
The Great Pyramid was built with a level of technological sophistication far in excess of anything that we have today. They don't use the inch as we normally have it in the English system. It's the cubit. And what's interesting about this cubit is that it is exactly 1/25 millionth of the polar diameter of the Earth, meaning the distance from the North Pole to the South Pole of the Earth. Chop it up into 25 million pieces. There's your cubit. It's perfect.
It's perfect. It's a cubit. The measurements, where it's placed, perfectly placed in the center of the Earth. There's so much when it comes to its numbers and occultism. Jessie, let's begin with you. Thoughts on what you just saw?
Yeah. Well, the first thing I was thinking of, when it's talking about the perfect alignment, it reminds me of the plumb lines, that within building you get, the construction of things. Is it possible that literally are examples that connect to spiritual plumb lines that the Lord has put into place? But, the mathematics also fascinates me as well. You get so much of that connection of architecture, engineering, all of that hidden knowledge coming down, whether that's through scripture, whether that's in the pyramids. But yeah, it's fascinating.
Gary, you took a look at that video, its measurements, where it's placed, its cubits, how it's measured. Cubits is biblical. And I found that to be interesting as well. It's a perfect square. Each piece that was used in that pyramid is a perfect square for that particular pyramid, not to say all pyramids, but that specific one in Egypt. Please give me your comments and thoughts on this video.
Well, and they're going to put things in there so that, and going with what I sort of laid down earlier, that this is to demonstrate that there was a civilization, a people, gods who had a superior knowledge and technology. So they are going to put ratios, they are going to put mathematical measurements, in this case, the cubit that has a ratio to the earth, just as you have other ratios to the radius and the circumference of the earth within the pyramids. And they're going to shift these types of things of sacred number mysticism and geometry in these sites around the world, because they want people to know that this is not done by some sort of hunter and gatherer civilization, right? This is a great civilization. This is a civilization we're still catching up to. And so when we look at the 7 sciences that creates mysticism, the 5th science is geometry, and it's known in the craft as masonry. And typically you are going to create monuments in masonry to honor the pantheon of gods. So this is polytheist history that's staring us in the face. And that the things that they do is to proclaim the greatness of the gods that they're worshiping, and that knowledge was passed on to humankind. And if that sounds familiar, that's the story we get all around the world in the book of Enoch, that the gods and the fallen angels passed down this knowledge to the antediluvians, who had some sort of working relationship with these pyramids, either just through worship or through the technology that maybe was established and embedded within the pyramids. So I think we have to look at this when we have so much scientific perfection in these buildings. We have to look at this, that it's part of a technology, it's part of a system. And it is something that if it's built to last the way it has been built to last, that technology is still there and it could still be active.
Can I add to that?
Please.
So it's interesting as you're talking about that, we know that within the system, they call themselves the builders, and you get a lot of the replicating of the perfectly squared imagery, whether that's in their buildings or, the way that they form their buildings, the structure. But in that also, where does that come from? We see it also in Mecca, within the Initiates of the Flame by Manly P. Hall. They talk about the cube and the square and kind of what that is, what it represents. And for them, it takes them back to that imagery of the war in heaven, particularly, right before Lucifer was cast down, when he's fighting with Michael. And it talks about the emerald stone that was in Lucifer's breastplate that Michael struck out. And so, in their beliefs, the stone of Mecca is actually that stone from Lucifer's breastplate that was struck, out by the Archangel Michael. So that adds an interesting twist then, as you're bringing out, are these places replicated to, the worship of their gods? And, what are they really worshiping with the imagery of that, if that's what that is?
I'm reading comments and love what you have to say, of course, about the breastplate and the cube. One particular comment here, Ben says, the pyramids are like the CERN of yesteryear. Interesting. The CERN of yesteryear. What would that mean? Is it a way or is it a place that harnesses information, knowledge? Is it on a ley line? Is it a portal, a doorway? Interesting what he said. I think it makes a valid point to ask. Let me get both your takes on that. Gary, what are your thoughts? Is it possible a type of CERN?
Yeah, I think it's a good point and a legitimate point, and we did touch on that last week in the show with CERN. that CERN is working interdimensionally and is very high level technology. And so the sort of connection back to the pyramids is that this is perhaps some sort of technology that was used as a portal. And so when Nimrod is building Babel, and in the tradition of the Old Testament, Babel means a ziggurat that was being built when every people was it was under the guidance and governorship of Nimrod, and that they had some sort of knowledge because anything they wanted to do, they were going to be able to do. And so this is known in the Sumerian traditions as Babalu, which means not confusion of languages, but a stargate or a portal into heaven and or into Hades and Sheol or both. And that this was common knowledge that they had this kind of technology in the ancient world. So yeah, there's a lot of connections there, and the knowledge that was received to build Babel came from Hermes, of part of the Hermes Trismegistus, and who discovers the two pillars, one that would survive the flood in this case versus the destruction of fire, that had the location for the knowledge that Hermes found at the Great Pyramid and below the Great Pyramid. And this is the knowledge that was taken back to Nimrod, who would go up on the ziggurat, according to Josephus, according to the book of Yashar, according to Jewish mysticism and other sources, that he would threaten God. If you get out of line again and try and bring a flood or do something that we don't like, we're going to go into heaven and we're going to kill you. So interdimensional travel somehow, which makes sense, because if he's just building this mud brick or clay brick ziggurat, you can't build that out of even the first heaven, let alone going interdimensionally. You'd have to be an absolute lunatic or a madman. So there's something more that's going on. And what was buried underneath the pyramid was this great knowledge of the antediluvians that's used in the secret societies, legends, and history, that all of the knowledge that Enoch had collected from the Watchers and the gods in polytheism, this was all buried in a library in the Hall of Records, the archives of the Masons below the pyramids. So when we talk about a technology, if you have all of the knowledge, you have written in there the technology as well. So if these were built on ley lines, and there's no scientific proof that they exist, but it's a very common doctrine within polytheism, that's part of the energy grid, and at certain locations you can get significant technology, that this was now some sort of industrial complex and a place of worship, and that could likely do interdimensional travel by its inference. And now we get discoveries that are coming out from the news media, although we're not getting a lot of knowledge, is that there's a vast network of tunnels and chambers underneath the Great Pyramid. Surprise, surprise. And underneath in this network of tunnels are 8 cylindrical chambers or voids or some sort of room, however you want to call it. It could be an artifact. It's even being described as artifacts that go 2,100 feet underground. Jeez. These are gigantic places, and they are speculating this may be the legendary Hall of the Records.
I'm so happy you mentioned that, Gary, because this is information that's starting to come out. Hall of Records under there. It's starting to go public. I'm going to play something on that. Before I do, Jesse, do you want to chime in or wait till after the video?
Yeah, I want to chime in just a little bit here.
Yes, please.
Yeah, it's interesting as you get into the records and stuff. Who do they keep records of? It's of men. And as you were talking, what was coming to my mind was the system's beliefs of the square, that represents the man, the square together, being the sign of the compass that they use for men, and the V that they use for women. And in the system, we, like when you start to get into the interdimensional travel, what was their purpose of that? It's that they wanted to be God. They wanted to get into the throne room of heaven and usurp God. And would they create portals, in the sign of man who has dominion of the earth that God gave that dominion to, and then, try to use that as their interdimensional access. So that was kind of intriguing as you were talking about that. And, then you get into their books, their secret knowledge, and some of the things that they have secret knowledge of, giants. And is it possible that, like when you think of organs, I'm talking about the musical organs that they have in the Catholic Church, you have pipelines that, that are made to create sound, to, give portal access to be able to use spiritual gates. Is it possible that, some of these deep chambers were actually made to operate kind of like an organ pipe? Giants are kind of known for singing, for their sounds, their deep tones. So it gets interesting as we get further in. Is it just books that they had knowledge of, or was it more?
Yeah.
Is all of that connected to songs and dimensions and dimensional access?
Well, a couple of interesting points on that, if I can, and I know you probably have another video to bring
No,
up,
keep
so I
going.
won't take too long. So, yeah, so I mean, this technology of vibration, just as it was used at Jericho by the Israelites, this is a technology. So one would expect music is associated with that. That also creates sound, and there's a mathematic to that. So you start to get into the level of technology that you might be able to create with it. Pipes are also, like the Pied Piper. Pipes in the occult is important, just as pipes are associated with Satan. So there are some significant kind of connections that are there within that sort of concept that, we want to, not get too far out on a limb and speculate, but again, it's part of that technology. And as we get into this ancient knowledge, which is part of this technology, this is like the pearls of wisdom. It is like a shatia in Jewish mysticism that was held in the palm of Moses's hands. I'm not saying this is biblical. This is from the mystical side. And that the shatia held all of the knowledge that ever was and whatever would be again. This is the same mythos that goes along with other allegories of this knowledge, like the tablets of Thoth, like the emerald tablet. And again, emerald and the jewel that was associated with Satan. All of this is part of this history that lives amongst us. We just don't recognize the language of it. And that if you had a storehouse of, I don't know how many shatia size tablets you could put in there, I guess as a stone, or how many tablets you could put in there, but that would be massive amounts of knowledge and a computing capability in types of rocks or crystals that we don't have an understanding of yet, but yet seems to be a constant with the ancients.
I mean, it's quite unbelievable. I'm perplexed at how more information isn't coming out yet on this type of thing. And I want to share this clip. And this clip goes a little bit about what's deep beneath the pyramids. All right. Talks a little bit about it. It's about 2 minutes. Both of you take a listen. It regurgitates a little bit of what both of you have to say. So take a listen. Here it is.
Beneath the blistering heat of the Giza Plateau, past the endless stream of tourists and centuries of excavation, something may have stirred. In March 2025, a team of researchers claimed to have uncovered what could be one of the most significant archaeological discoveries in modern history, an entire underground complex hidden beneath Egypt's pyramids. Using radar technology, the team described vast chambers, spiraling staircases, long corridors, even what they believe to be an ancient water system, buried deep beneath the very stones that have stood for over 4,000 years. It's a claim that has reignited a firestorm of speculation. Could this be the long-rumored Hall of Records? The mythical library said to be sealed beneath the sands since the fall of Atlantis, housing the lost world. The research team, led by Professor Corrado Malanga, used ground-penetrating radar to scan beneath the plateau, revealing what they interpret as organized structural patterns. Columns, rooms, interlinked corridors. But the excitement was quickly met with skepticism. Prominent Egyptologists, including Dr. Zahi Hawass, dismissed the findings as unscientific, even dangerous. The study has not been peer-reviewed. The visuals presented to the public were AI-generated mock-ups, and Malanga himself is no stranger to controversy, having made past claims involving alien abductions and fringe science. So, what are we really looking at here? Is this genuine evidence of a vast, forgotten network beneath one of the most studied archaeological sites on Earth? Or simply the latest in a long line of misinterpretations and myth-chasing?
Couple of key things. Hall of Records. There's knowledge information. There's all kinds of beams. But this particular guy, and I don't want us to comment just yet because we'll get there. This particular guy here shut it down. Zahi Hawass, who's connected to a lot of politicians and seems to be the gatekeeper. Let's not touch on him yet. We'll save that to the end. But he is trying to block or stop information from coming. Recently, he was interviewed by Joe Rogan, and he went off. He went off on Joe. A very interesting, controversial person who is the gatekeeper, who controls information that's out there, who's the one who shuts down a lot of things. I have another video I'm going to share in regards to another finding where he shuts it down again. This guy is all around conspiracy, shutting down any type of thought that there's hidden knowledge, hidden information, hidden technology, a hidden city underground. That's the question from the video we got. Jesse, begin with you. Do you believe there is, and people are preventing that information from coming out?
I definitely believe that there's hidden cities, and I do believe there are hidden cities under the majority of the pyramids. Are there also hidden libraries? Absolutely. I think there are. But again, it's technology that, we're not even familiar with. Are there things that are so advanced that, we can't even fathom yet? I believe there are. Things that would, I guess that, we question, we can't even imagine that they're there, but I think that they are there. And I think that, we see the people in connection to individuals in the system that are quickly covering stuff up. Why? Because they don't want us to know the truth. They don't want us to have access to this information, nor do they want us to be able to have that knowledge. One, because, what does it go back to? It goes back to the truth that there is a God. And, that's what they want to prevent. They do not want us to have that relationship with God. So that's some of the things I think that are, connected to that. And it's interesting.
Interesting. And we'll touch on him a little bit more. The question, Gary, from the video we saw, is it possible that they did find an underground city, a hall of records, information, knowledge, technology that's so advanced, and we have a gatekeeper who's blocking it from coming out or stopping people from researching it? Your thoughts on this, Gary?
Well, he's definitely a gatekeeper. I've been watching him almost all of my life on documentaries and stuff, and he is always the one that limits the amount of time, how many things can be done, who can investigate, and then shuts things down if he's not liking what he's seeing they're discovering. And so then he went, and the information has to filter through him before it even gets released. So he's an ultimate watcher, so to speak, of the ancient knowledge, or Natsar, guardian of the knowledge, as the Nazarenes were. And the Nazarenes were Essenes who take their religion back, at the time of Pliny, 2,000 years before that, so older than the Israeli religion, and back to the therapeutate of Heliopolis. So he's in that kind of watcher, sort of guardian, and we get that in the occult all the time about these guardians who watch and protect things. So underground city, likely a possibility for sure, because we don't know what's under there. Underground cities are common in ancient ology, not uncommon. And in fact, a lot of the sites that we're getting glimpses of now, they have more underground than they have on the surface, like Göbekli Tepe. And other locations in Turkey. You have Petra, which is, we only see a small piece of it above the surface. The rest is below. There are underground cities discovered all around the world. And we have cities that are underwater with pyramids. And we have pyramids underwater all over the world. And so this is an attempt to control the information here. And even if we do the direct comparative with Göbekli Tepe, it is thought to be a stargate as well. And it has the same sort of T-shaped construction in there that's in other places that have stargates or portals. And again, at mountains, and in this case, a duplication of a mountain, they tend to have portals, just as you have the gateway to Hades at Mount Hermon at the bottom, right where the Pan Temple is. And so these are constants again in sort of prehistory. So there's definitely a conspiracy to control this information. And it's very, very restrictive, and they do get very protective. Information is coming out in a way that they haven't manipulated and controlled the flow thereof. So I think we might be getting to a point where we see more things being released, but the gatekeepers may just come and shut it down again.
Yeah. And I agree, and that's where we're at right now with the gatekeeping. Interesting stuff. Again, reverting to this so-called Dr. Zahi Hawaii, or I don't even know how to pronounce his last name, but either way, he is connected to always some type of conspiracy of information and knowledge being released to the public. I'm going to play another quick video, get both your takes, where again, something interesting in regards to this guy. So take a look at their discovery and what happens. Turn up your volumes. Here it is.
In 1993, German engineer Rudolf Gantenbrink was inside the Great Pyramid of Giza studying an unexplored shaft in the Queen's Chamber. What's interesting about this shaft is that unlike the two shafts found in the King's Chamber, they don't open up to the outside. Instead, they seemingly go about 10 feet into the wall and lead to a dead end, meaning the purpose of them was still unknown. So Rudolf created a little robot that was equipped with a camera and a light small enough to fit inside of this 8-inch wide square shaft. And when they sent this robot into the tunnel, something happened that would change his life forever. Once the robot reached what was supposed to be the end of this shaft, they noticed that it kept going. But rather than continuing in a straight line, it actually ramped up at a 40-degree angle into a much longer, previously undiscovered section. And from the camera's feed, they could see that it went for another 90 yards before coming to a dead end, where the robot came up to what appeared to be a tiny limestone door with 2 copper handles embedded into it. This discovery baffled Rudolf and his team because metal has never been found anywhere else inside the Great Pyramid, which is supposed to be made entirely of limestone. And they could tell this was a door of some sort because it had a little bit of space around the edges, indicating there was likely something behind it. Was this door placed there after the pyramid was built, or was it intentionally put there to protect something? Either way, Rudolf had to know what was behind that door. That's when he asked Zahi Hawass, the Minister of Antiquities for the Egyptian government, for permission to investigate further and see what was behind the door.
We worked 2 years.
Now no longer?
No longer, no.
Why not?
But rather than giving him permission, Zahi, along with the Egyptian authorities, shut down Rudolph and his team and banned them from ever researching the site again.
There were quite a lot of problems between us about the question how to state the find.
Now, we've actually met Zahi before in my video about the Sphinx, and the truth is, Zahi, despite being the most famous archaeologist in Egypt, has a known history of suppressing any new evidence that may conflict with mainstream Egyptology.
When I do archaeology, you listen to me. Shut up!
Zahi is an interesting character. They found this system that goes up, had a connection with a door with metal. He shut it down, didn't want him to investigate anymore, talk about it anymore, and never let him back to the space to research it. You saw what he said. Let's first begin with Jesse, your take on this tunnel that was found that headed towards a door, what it could mean. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think there was a lot more there. And I think that, you know, obviously there was cover up, and the man continued to look where he wasn't supposed to look.
Yeah.
And because he kept pushing, they shut it down, you know.
Gatekeeper. Gary,
yeah.
Again, this system that was found, they thought it went down. Instead, it went up. There seemed to be a doorway. You saw it. There was some steel on it. Zahi cut it, shut it, and banned them from doing any more research. Your thoughts on what we saw?
Yeah, just anytime I see him involved or I see investigations into Egypt, it leaves me frustrated with how things get shut down, how the story is tried to be rewritten and reframed in the modern sort of propaganda. So this is just consistent with what's going on there. So, and then you start to say at some point in time, so if it's technology, and this is ancient technology, and this is technology of the angels or the gods, and are they afraid of just the technology? Or are they afraid that is this also perhaps more than just a technology, more than just a generator, more than just what we sort of feebly try and speculate? Is this some sort of doomsday type of weapons from forgotten ages past? And I'm not saying it is. I don't have any proof that it is. But what I do know is that this is an age that we're moving into that's going to be destroyed by fire. And that destruction has come in the past. So are we seeing that interconnection? But whether or not you have technology that's used to create a super weapon at that site, or you just have the technology to create the weapons of the gods that are all fire weapons as they're recorded in polytheism, and particularly in the subcontinent of India with their accounts of the wars of the gods. They had planet destroying capabilities, not just by fire and you don't have life on Earth, like to destroy it down to its foundations. So that's a level of technology that you would have access to. So they maybe want to control it for that particular aspect as well. But if they had access to that knowledge themselves, have they already developed it? Or are they still not able to deal with the technology yet, and they're still learning how to use it?
Again, a lot of interesting questions. And I like what this viewer had to say, Sonia. Pyramids are energy conductors. There's a lot of truth to that. And there's a lot of science and research that goes into that. And, you know, there's been some experiments where people sleep inside pyramids. They put plants underneath a pyramid frame. For some reason, it grows a lot better. This is one experiment. Another one is putting it over water. You have a glass of water. You put this pyramid over. Pyramids seem to be a very interesting thing of power, especially occultically. You'll see architecture, buildings. There are some in Miami, Florida, other parts of the world, where the tops of the buildings will have pyramids. It's perfectly in shape and mathematical. But what is the true meaning? What does it all mean? Why are people using pyramids, especially anciently, for this type of thing? Jesse, can you tell us what do you know? What is with the special magical power about pyramids?
I think it goes to the light spectrums. You have you have the triangular shape, that funnel shape that both goes up as well as meets in the center and goes down, creating, these multiple hourglasses throughout the universe, I guess we'll say. And was that a way, that the Lord built everything so that, energy would be funneled a certain way? Have they created structures, indeed, as Gary proposed, maybe where they're using those structures to access mass amounts of energy, funnel it into certain places? Does it get into maybe even heavenly or other dimension storehouses of energy that are reserved for days of wrath? There's a lot of different speculations of what all that could be, but I definitely think there's something there with energy. And I do believe that there could be something there with weaponry as well.
Wow. Gary, thoughts? What are your feelings, or what is your understanding from what you've researched on the meaning? Why does it harness so much power, pyramids?
Yeah, really, really good point. So just from sort of a layman sort of perspective, I would speculate that it can channel the power of the gods. And there may be an amplification factor that takes other things to do it, but I think it's some sort of channeling of that sort of power. And I think it sort of might be reflected in the ancient image of the pyramids, that they used to say that they used to shine like opalescent energy in the sunlight. And so I don't know whether there's a relationship there with the sun, or that was just shiny stuff that they would put over the bricks that now have, been weather stripping away, or there was some sort of energy they're tapping into that made it light up like that. But still, that's a channeling of this technology, or a channeling of the power that people use pyramids for today, for healing, for whatever else. Or at least trying to do that. And if you look at it in the sense of creating a portal, if you had the ability through your knowledge and certain words and incantations or sounds to create a portal in a certain location, in a certain geometric format, then you start to understand how you can have like 100 dolmens at Gilgal Raphaim, because these are portals, or that you have these mini Stonehenge things around the world that are called dolmens that the fairy folk would come through, or a fairy mound, or Stonehenge would have portals in that sort of same application, because a dolmen has two sides like this, and then it's capped with one stone like that over top. And so when you get the triptych architecture in masonry, that represents different portals as they're sort of representing in that architecture. So, but there's more to it than just having the geometry. There's a geomancy that is attached to that.
Yeah. Again, folks, I mean, there are so many questions, a lot more than there are answers for sure. And there is a special power to these pyramids, like Gary and Jessie said. Is it a filter, a conductor for the gods, like a tape recorder or other forms? Was it used in that particular way? Either way, they're used in experiments in many different forms. And some people were even writing that people have very lucid and unbelievable dreams when you're in a pyramid. Because people will do that. They create pyramids and they put them over their bed. It's unbelievable. We obviously don't have all the answers, and we'll still push and try to find out. But there's a lot of secrets, ladies and gentlemen. Still so many secrets that have not yet shared. But we do what we can to decode these things, to research things, to ask questions, and try to get you some answers. I want to thank you both for this amazing conversation. After this, we're going on to my Patreon to have a Q&A, giving everyone an opportunity to ask a few questions, be part of a roundtable. So I'm quite looking forward to that. Please join us. The link is in the description. But before we sign off, anything, Jessie, you'd like to say in closing about tonight's show, or how people could follow and support your ministry?
Yeah, I encourage you to join us over for the on Patreon for the conversation. It definitely is going to get probably more interesting tonight as people ask questions. It is one of those topics that just leaves you, I think, with more questions than you have answers, but it's fun to speculate and conversate about it. I encourage people to follow me. You can find me on kingdomlivingwithjesse.com.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Jesse. And I got to say that, Gary, your take on this again. What are your thoughts in closing about this? And how can people follow and support your ministry?
Yeah, one thing that I would really like to leave people with is that when we're talking about the gods, we're talking about fallen angels, and that's the angelic technology. And that the MO of the fallen ones is to counterfeit or usurp everything that God has created, and you turn it to honor themselves and glorify themselves, and as an insult to the God of the world. So when we look at what they're doing, understand that knowledge is neither good nor evil. Technology isn't good or evil. It's how it's applied. And that's what they do that's differently, and why we get the imagery of the knowledge of good and evil in the garden, which is a reflection of this ancient knowledge as well to a certain degree, depending on how far you want to go with that. So when we look at them counterfeiting things, that would be things that might have been in place when the world was still good and before the rebellion. You might have had pyramids before that, and that they have just usurped that as part of their religion and part of their rebellion. So we shouldn't just dismiss something that is built in a way that, just blows our mind. But when it's used to honor the pantheon of the gods, that's where you make the separation, where you know that technology was not used for good. It was used to not for the benefit of humankind, but for the destruction of humankind.
Well said. Guys, a lot more to discuss. We're going to do a Q&A following this show on the Reveal Report, the link in the description. And if you love what you see and you want this show free every Monday, one or two of you, please help us any way you can. Help the Reveal Report grow by sending a little something our way. Go to paypal.me/George Iceman. The link is in the description. 40,000 views last week. One person came through. Wow. Hats off to Miss Lisa M. for really showing some love and support and saying, keep this show on YouTube, George. Let everyone see it. And she helps do that and keeps it going, because without her and a few other of you that help out, we would be exclusive on Patreon. So I thank you again. Once again, paypal.me/George Iceman. That's how you can help keep this show on the air every single Monday on YouTube. I appreciate the love and support. I want to thank you all for being here. On behalf of Jesse, Gary Wayne, and myself, we all thank you for watching. Hope you join us for the after show coming up next. Have a great one. Good night, everyone.